Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bultan of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. From attorneys generals to state senators to mayors to school board members, these are the people that are pushing policies and politics that will respond to climate change, rebuild our economy, address racial injustice, and restore our democracy. These are incredibly talented people who have dedicated themselves to public service when their country and their communities needed it the most. Check out newdealleaders.org to see what I'm talking about.
My guest today is State Representative Stephanie Simacek, who just finished up her first session in the Arizona House. We talk about how showing up as a parent worried about her daughter's education led her to run for public office, how she won a seat in a tough year for Democrats, how her caucus was able to log some wins in the state budget, and how Arizonans are feeling about what's happening in Washington, D.C. She also shares what she's learned over the last year about using her voice and what we can learn from those lessons as well. Hope you enjoy. Stephanie Simacek, welcome to An Honorable Profession.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you. There's so much happening in the great state of Arizona and everywhere, everywhere. But really happy to have you. I thought maybe we'd start just with you are a new legislator. Congratulations. Now, it probably feels like 10 years ago, but it was just November that you got elected and got through your first session. You won a seat when Democrats were expected to do well, didn't do as well as I hoped, but you were able to grab a seat. Tell me why you think you did well when Democrats kind of statewide didn't do as well as has been hoped.
Yeah, this is something we've talked about a lot in the community. Something that my district does, which is Legislative District 2, it's in the North Phoenix area. We run something called a single shot, and we do this on purpose. We run one Democrat. And at this point, because our district is majority Republican, next being independent and then Democrat, we're a very purple state. We often say the purplest district and the purplest state. And so what we do there is we run a single shot, which means we ask Dems to just vote for one. And mathematically, that allows us to have this seat. In the past, we've done it this way, and we've been able to hold the seat, so we continue to do so. Hopefully, there will be a day when we'll be able to run two people, but right now, this district, if we were to run two people, would probably be completely red. We saw that in some of our neighboring districts, some who had also run a single shot before and decided to run two this last cycle and were not successful and end up losing all their seats. So for right now, what works, it allows us to have this voice in the district at the House. And like I said, hopefully someday we'll be able to change that. But for now, we really put that messaging out there to just vote for the one Democrat.
And it's probably important for our listeners to know who might not know that you guys do this interesting thing with your House district, which is two people per House district, as opposed to a lot of other states that just have one. So that's a real unique situation in Arizona.
It is. And the other thing is having a large population of independents. What we do is we knock thousands and thousands of doors and have conversations. And we target those individuals to make sure that we're having conversations with them about what's really important to everyday Arizonans. And I think at the end of the day, we're able to swing a lot of those independent votes because really as a candidate, my role is, I'm just a member of the community, prior public school teacher, really passionate about just trying to do what's best for Arizonans. As an everyday person. And I think that people really resonate with that when I have conversations with them at their door.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, how you got into public life and decide to run for public office. You've been, as you said, a school teacher, first grade, I think, if I remember. Yeah. Love that age, such a great age. And so what prompted you to decide to jump into the political arena?
Yeah, well, I can honestly say it was something I never thought I would be doing. What happened several years ago, I have two daughters. They're both in the public schools here. and we were having some issues with our school board, and choices were being made and conversations were being had that were not putting our students in the best interest. And so I kind of jumped in as a parent first, saying, what can we do about this? And essentially they said, well, you can run. You can run for the seat, and we will try to, it will kind of help equal out the vote and get that voice in there that's kind of equal out that voice that's been going on that's, really not doing well for our students. And so I said, okay, it's easy to talk a lot about what people need to do to get things done and fixed, but then it's a whole other thing to actually jump in and do it yourself. But I really do feel like, if you're going to complain about it, be a part of the solution. So that's
Yeah.
what I decided. And I ran for school board, and I was successful, which also in this district, for the school board to get a Democrat on the school board is very rare. But I was happy to accept that win and move forward, and help again, do what's best for our students and our teachers here in Deer Valley. And I am now going to my third year, finishing up my third year. But 2 years ago, Representative Judy Schwiebert, who held the House seat here in LD2, decided that she was going to run for the Senate seat for LD2. And she approached me and said, would you be willing to run for the seat? And I said, absolutely not. And she looked at me and said, why? And I said, well, I'm a mom. I'm a teacher. I'm a community member, but I am not a politician. I do not have a degree in political science. I don't have a background in government, and I'm not an attorney. And she said to me that that's exactly why I needed to run, and that the people of this community wanted somebody that they could relate to and understood the everyday challenges that the community in LD2 and all of the state of Arizona is facing. And so there were several more conversations, I think maybe 7 asks or so, until I finally gave in and I said, okay. But, a huge part of it for me too was really making sure that my community wanted me to be the one to represent them. I wasn't going to come in election and say, I'm running, right? I wanted them to say, we want you to run. We want you to be our representative, because I need their back and their support. And I think once I felt solid on that, I could really decide, like, hey, okay, I'll do it, because they were just as excited about it as I was.
Yeah, that's so great. I mean, so it's interesting. You still are on the school board then, just to be.
I am, yes.
Yeah, which is unique, I think, actually, to hold 2 offices at once. And I'm kind of curious, like, how that works for you. I'm sure it's really helpful, as you're saying. We're coming out of the community. You can, so by virtue of being on that board, presumably you're hearing very directly, particularly in education, of course, kind of from your constituents. You can take that to the state house. How do you see those 2 kind of things going hand in hand?
Absolutely. It has had its challenges more on the scheduling side of things. It's really important in my community as a board member to be going to lots of events with our students, whether that's plays, dances, sports, and I haven't been able to do that as much while I'm serving full time on the ledge from that was January through July. So I'm back into doing that now, but um, what has made it so incredible is that I have seen now, as a board member, around this time every year, we get policy coming back to us that we have to approve as a governing board. And that policy comes down from the state, whatever was passed over the last session. And so I also, as a state representative, I was chosen to sit on the education committee, which is something I really, really desired, and I was able to obtain. And I was so excited, because that's really strongly how I came in with all of this, my passion for public education. And so I was put on that committee. That committee is once a week, every Tuesday. There's usually in kind of a start time. There's never really an end time. You just go, you hear the bill. What that has provided me, my knowledge, my background knowledge as both a teacher and as a board member, to know what my community and really what the state of Arizona needs in public education. And it really comes down to properly funding it, and funding it in a way that allows every child to thrive. Arizona is one of the worst per pupil funding states in this country. So I believe we're either 48th or 49th. We're always kind of fighting for that one spot. And it's nothing to be proud of. But to sit in those ed committees and then to hear the bills that were coming in, knowing what I know about public education was actually really frustrating, because they were not the things that we needed to be talking about. Some of that, for example, would include arming teachers with firearms. That is nothing that a teacher has ever come forward and requested to have. That's something that the decided they wanted to make an issue, and run as a bill, which, because of our governor, eventually was vetoed. But you sit there and you hear all of these bills coming through that you know are not to the benefit of our students and teachers. And what I really picked up on over this last session was the importance of using your voice and out on those. So a wonderful thing to do in committee, even when you're the minority, is to take those bills and speak out against them and explain to them why they're so bad. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, they still pass through most times because we are also the minority in the ed committee. That's just the way it's set up. But again, using your voice. And then that eventually will come back onto the floor where we'll have a discussion, another opportunity to use our voice. And then if it does pass, it would go through the Senate and vice versa, and then end up going to the governor's desk. So those bills died because of our governor. But if we were in a trifecta here of the current majority now, we would have been in really big trouble this year with our public schools. Worse off than we are.
Talk a little bit more about using your voice. I think that's so important. I think a lot of people are struggling with, what to do if you are in a minority in the legislature, even if you're just a person, right, in a state where you feel like maybe you're not the majority opinion, or and it's hard in this day and age with the, proliferation of media and the changing media environment to get your voice out. So what is for you, what does making your voice heard look like? What have you learned over that first session that's been effective?
Absolutely. What I learned was, for the first couple of weeks when bills started to come in, kind of listened. I took a step back and listened to what was being presented, and then feeling inside that I couldn't be quiet, and so pressing my button and saying, I have something to say, and pushing back when false information is being presented. And so physically speaking out, right? And then taking that same messaging to the floor. And the wonderful thing about my Democratic caucus here in Arizona is that we all have areas that we are very passionate about, and we take the time to speak with each other, to share what's important about a certain bill in a certain category. So we all sit on different committees. So I take the information as an educator and sitting on the ed committee and share it with my caucus, so that they're informed of why I voted that way on that bill, why it's so bad, or why we should support it and why it's so good. And then vice versa, they do the same with me. So there are topics I'm not always 100% comfortable on the floor standing up and speaking to, but those that I am comfortable with, I use that opportunity to do that. And then something that was really unique about our caucus this year that I'm really excited to share is that we managed to get through a budget at the end of session that was actually quite successful for being the Dem minority. And what we did with that is my leaders, Oscar de los Santos, and my assistant leader, Nancy Gutierrez, put together something called Democrats Deliver Tour. And what we did was we highlighted areas of the budget where we were able to get funding, and we went around to those areas and saw how that impacted them. So, for example, we were able to secure $10 million for free school lunches, and we were able to get a ton of money available for additional wins for like food security, and getting that money to places like the St. Mary's Food Bank, and pushing back on the Republicans to end the SNAP benefits. Although now we're in a whole different situation with that now, but at a state level, we were able to get that taken care of. And what we ended up doing was we went down to St. Mary's as a caucus, packed food, had conversations with the people who are running that program to hear how the impact of the money that we were able to provide out of that budget was affecting their programs. And it was very nice to be able to see the result, right? We oftentimes look at a piece of say, okay, this amount was allocated here and this was allocated here. And we see it, right? But do we really get to see it? Do we get to have that opportunity to immerse ourselves in the environment where you can really see the positive change that even little things are able to do? So we toured, like I said, the food bank. We toured an organization called Keys for Change and worked with 4 different shelter and homeless organizations to see how the 15 million in funding we were able to get to help service them and what they're doing for Arizonans. We paid a trip to the VA up in like Havasu to see how benefits that we were able to get for our veterans and how they were helpful up there at that facility, and just kind of pointed out different areas. And then this week for the places we weren't able to speak at, I mean, even just had so many other great wins. We're going to be running some podcasts. We're doing that where we're interviewing some of the organizations that will benefit from the money that we were able to preserve from the budget to these organizations. So we try to take that information and get that out there on social media so that people can see, we might be the minority, but we're using our voice here. And this is what we have been able to do. And let's celebrate those wins, because in the environment that we're in right now, and when it can feel so heavy, and it can feel like it's every day is so hard, and we just think it can't get any worse or crazier, and then it does. These wins and seeing these wins and what they provide to Arizona families is really comforting, and it makes you happy and grateful that you're able to do something like that and keep going and see, okay, this is what we need to keep on doing, because there are wins. We just need to.
That gives you hope. Gives you hope to see it. Why do you think that's awesome? I didn't know about the tour. I think they're the tour and the podcast, and that's good advice for people listening to the podcast too, from the things that they can do in their states. What do you attribute, just to take a step backwards, what do you attribute the ability to get some of those wins out of the legislature to? How were you successful in securing some of that money?
Well, at the end of the day, we do have to come to an agreement on the budget. On the House side, we heard 2 budgets that were labeled as nonpartisan or partisan agreement, but they were not. They were really bad, and they did nothing for Arizonans. And we pushed back. We refused to vote on it. At the same time, the Senate side was working on a budget, and we chose Senate Republicans, I should add. And we, as Democratic House reps, decided to work with them on that. And knowing that we could come to some areas where we could negotiate. And so we did. And it was a very unique experience. It was my first experience, obviously. But, sometimes just saying, we have to look outside the box here. And in this case, we did. And we worked with the Senate Republicans on it and did not work with the House Republicans. And then that allowed us to kind of get through this budget and present that. And they were just very willing to negotiate, more so than the House Republicans. And at the end of the day, that's what got us through. And also, we needed to have something that we could comfortably present to the governor that she would be okay with. And that was able to happen. But again, just lots of conversations, that's give and take. And it's also just not backing down when you're, to so many of these organizations that need this money, and really remembering your job as a legislator is to make sure that you are serving the people of Arizona. And I serve legislative district 2, but I also serve the entire state. So to me, I'm looking for benefits that are going to help my district in LD2. But at the end of the day, my job is to help all Arizonans. And I've seen that from day one. That's been kind of my motto, and I will continue to do that. So I think it was really important that we all came in with an attitude like that, not thinking that I'm just going to get a win for my district, but what kind of wins can we get where it can affect everybody in the state of Arizona? And I think that's that really allowed us to have those really good negotiations on those areas, rather than get individually greedy about our district and just hog and chomp ourselves.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that also what I like about what you're saying is this idea that you can use your voice, because it is hard to be the minority. I know you, this was your first time. I think you had 11 bills, none of which even came up for a vote, maybe even, right?
Never heard in committee. Never even
Never heard in committee even. So, so that must, I don't know if that was surprising to you as a first time legislator, or whether that was, there was one in particular that I read about that I thought was, I know that was close to your heart, that had to do with health insurance companies and being able to have a place to make complaints. So I guess, it's a two-part question, but just like, what was it surprising to kind of how the legislator operates, or what other things surprised you? And were you able, just by using your voice, to maybe get that idea out there, even if the bill didn't get a hearing? Do you feel like you might have moved the needle at all?
Yes. So great question. Definitely was surprised to discover that the bill would never even be heard in committee.
Mm.
That to me, it would get assigned and then it would just never be heard. So eventually it would die. And so I had what I would do, and especially with that particular bill, that yes, was very close to my heart. It had a lot to do with my own experience with my daughter, who walked very late, and had some developmental delays and was denied by the insurance company after some time to have physical therapy so that she could walk, and fought that and just failed. So at the end of the day, I ended
Mm.
up paying out of pocket, which is, I'm glad and I'm grateful I was able to do that. But there are many Arizonans and people across the country, United States, who are not in that position to do that. So that was personal for me. Went to the chair, the chair of that committee, presented the bill to him, asked him to at least have it heard, and it wasn't. But what we did do, and I worked with a wonderful organization called Opportunity Arizona, to get this out. Yes, to use our
Mm.
voice. So we held a press conference and we spoke out on this bill and several others that kind of came together in a package. There was affordable housing, there was the insurance for me, there was a prescription, affordable prescriptions. So we kind of packaged them in a package and presented them at a press conference this year. And what that provided was, that experience and having the opportunity to speak out on it. This year, I am running the bill again. It's already getting ready to go. And I plan on, again, approaching the chair about it, but also really getting the message out there even more. So, social media, urging people to contact the chair and have him have the bill heard in committee. So, lots of times when our community gets together and they put their voices together, and they, in this case, approach the chair and other people on that committee to say, hey, this bill is important to me as an Arizonan. I want to hear this bill. Please hear it. And then that hopefully will give maybe an opportunity for it to be heard. I would love that. I don't know if that's going to happen, but in the for the sake of continuing to use our voice, I will continue to run this bill until it is heard. And that's really my goal. And we'll flip the ledge in 2026, and then I'll be able to have this bill presented. But so yeah, all of that comes into play of using your voice and making sure it gets out there. And then maybe even bringing in some hostile amendments on the floor, strike everything's, and presenting that bill. So
Mm.
just little, much, not little, being a bit louder than last cycle. But I also think that takes time. Being a
Yeah.
newbie, I would have been able to pull off last session, but looking
Yeah,
forward to
absolutely.
that
You
now.
learn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's wonderful.
Exactly.
Before I move on, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on nationally and how it's playing out in Arizona. But before I do, I want to just mention, I should have mentioned this at the top, but New Deal found you because you were endorsed in your first race by a group called Next 50, which is a partner of ours. And I just want to
Yes.
acknowledge that this is a somewhat of a new partnership for us, and it's been wonderful to get from them. They hear about people when they're running for office, and then we can bring them on in the governing side of things. So it's really fun to have you on. I think it's our first Next 50 endorsed person that came onto New Deal as a new leader. So just wanted to acknowledge that and thank Next 50 for that. But let's talk about what's happening. You mentioned the snap a minute ago. So much chaos in Washington that raining down on all of the states. We're having this conversation right before November 1st, which is a kind of a deadline of a cliff that's going to happen, where people are getting their health care notices and going to see these premiums skyrocketing. What are you hearing on the ground now that you're out of session and back home? What are people talking about to you? What are they worried about?
People are very scared. I receive many emails from constituents asking, what am I going to do? What's going to happen? I just received one the other day from a father and grandfather who his daughter and her husband and their child ended up having to move in with him because they couldn't afford the cost here in Arizona for the housing. And they are also on SNAP benefits and they're both working full time. I mean, these are two individuals, these are parents who are working very hard to make a wonderful life for their son, and now these will be cut off. And so what that does in this particular family is it people, they're having to pull from other resources to be able to make sure that there's food put on the table. And yes, come Saturday, 40 million will be cut from SNAP in the United States, and 1 million of that will affect our Arizonans here. What I'm trying to do is put together resources for those families that can, we have, like I said, when we had volunteered at St. Mary's Food Bank. And then we also have many other banks, food banks and organizations across the state. So my goal right now as a state rep for my constituents is to get them resources so that when they contact me, I can say, you know, I understand, and this is what I can do right now. It's extremely challenging as a state representative having this be a federal issue, especially after going through a session at our level as a state where we were able to prevent limits of SNAP being put on. So the majority over this last session wanted to limit what could be spent with SNAP dollars, and it was just getting very nitpicky. And of all
Mm.
the things, like many, is it really that important at the end of the day? No. And so we thought we figured it out here. We kept those benefits going for the Arizona for our Arizonans, and then to know now that because it's a federally funded program, that that's going to be cut. So as a state rep, my job is to be able to provide my community with resources to go get help, and we'll continue to see this in other departments like healthcare, for example. I know the free clinics around the state are ramping up to be able to bring in more people when their health insurance premiums go up, unless we put a stop to this. And so we know even with SNAP though that money, there is a fund that can be released now for these families that would make it available to them to continue to receive these benefits. And Speaker Mike Johnson is doing nothing about that. And so we really need to, and it's not, I would also like to point out that it's not for a lack of Democrats across this country and in Arizona. They're there. They're out there every week. They all showed up to work today, yesterday, at the Capitol in DC, ready to work, and there are no Republicans there to make these negotiations. So it's very scary. People are scared. I mean, it's food is an essential for survival. And then when you have families and young children, as a mom, I mean, it's terrifying to think that you won't be able to put food on the table for your family. And so, at the very minimum, this is what we can do. I also point out that it's about to be November 1st, which is the holidays are coming around, and this is a time when we already see a high demand go up for food because of the holidays and the seasons, and now to be in this position and just be starting with much less. So we need to make sure that we are getting those resources out for our community members and then volunteering that time, helping collect food, just to make everything available for those who are able to do that for others.
So you share your district with the Republicans. We talked about at the beginning of the exact same district.
Mhm.
He's hearing the same things from the families, presumably, right? The same people who are scared, the same people who are not receiving the benefits they need. I know this is a federal issue, but I'm just curious, like, are you getting any sense from state Republicans that they're going to be putting pressure on federal Republicans to come back and do something about this? Because they're in the district hearing these same stories you are, and they have to be worried both about, from a governing standpoint, getting people what they need, but also from a political standpoint, I would think that this is, concerning to them. What are you hearing on that side of the aisle?
Unfortunately, like many other topics that we present as Dems to the Republican Party to help us work together on, it's crickets. We don't hear anything.
Mm.
We've had other issues that we've tried to have discussions about, and they won't hear us, and it's really unfortunate because there's some wonderful, I work with a lot of wonderful people, Dems and Republicans, and it makes me really sad to have healthy conversations, but then at the end of the day, to see them vote in a way that's not beneficial to Arizonans just because their party tells them to. And I would love to be able to hear some messaging coming out of the Arizona Republicans saying and pushing back on the SNAP benefit cuts and seeing what we can do. But I am not seeing that. And our my leadership. Has been really wonderful in keeping us, in the loop with conversations and things that are going on. And we are not hearing anything. We are not hearing pushback.
Mm.
So even today, the majority of us on the Dem side we got together and we put out a letter. We all read a letter to the Department of Agriculture regarding these SNAP benefits. And please, as Democrats, as Arizonans, please do not cut these services. And I haven't seen anything like that come out from the Republican Party.
Wow,
Unfortunately.
it's unfortunate. Yeah, it is unfortunate. Maybe just completely out of curiosity, the other reason Arizona, one of the other reasons Arizona's in the news right now is, of course, you have a new congresswoman who has been unable to be sworn in for now, probably going on close to a month, maybe,
Yes.
getting there. And I'm just curious about, we're all seeing the national news, but in Arizona, I know that I think the state just sued over this.
They did. Yeah.
Is this on people's minds? Do people know this? Are people talking about it in Arizona?
All over. Yes. I have family members out of state who call in too, but it's definitely a topic in Arizona. An entire congressional district is not being represented right now. Those individuals are paying taxes. So it's taxation without representation. It's gone on. There have been reasons supposedly that he has said he's not going to swear her in, which are all untrue. She just wants to be sworn in. She doesn't need anything fancy. She's a fighter. I had the opportunity to knock doors for her. She's going to be a wonderful leader for the state of Arizona. We just need to make sure that she gets sworn in. And it's really sad, and it kind of adds to all of this to see that this isn't happening. I'm appreciative of our Attorney General, Chris Mays, because she is suing Mike Johnson. She's filed. These are actions, and these are the things that need to happen so that we don't just sit back and say, okay, well, we'll wait. And that's how we become numb and allow things to continue in this manner. We have to, again, the theme here, I think, is using our voices and speaking up and sharing the
Yeah.
importance of that. It's extremely frustrating. There are people even within don't live in CD7 are frustrated and angry, and we are trying to push back on that, but not much luck so far.
Yeah, sounds another theme. Not hearing a lot of response to some of this, using our voices, but I do think that the legal strategies have been successful on some things. So hopefully that will be what it takes. Maybe just lastly, looking kind of ahead to next session, you talked a little bit about using your voice differently, or just more continuing to grow in that area and be loud and keep pushing bills that you think are important, even if they're not going to get the hearings until they do. Anything else you're looking forward to next session that you think will be important for you?
I think for the state of Arizona and public education, I think is to keep pushing. We have the ESA voucher program here. We are one of the first states to implement that. And so therefore, we're one of the worst states to see how negative it has impacted our state. Kind of the poster for how awful this program has been for draining our budget. And what I hope to see in this coming session is continue conversations about the importance of transparency and accountability for those voucher programs. I think that's what we're asking for at this point at minimum. And I really don't think it's too much to ask for, considering our public schools are required to allocate and also defend where every single penny goes, right, for public education. And our ESA voucher program doesn't do any of that. It's out of control. Our budget's bleeding from it. And it's also the solution to so many of these budget cuts. If we can wrap some control over that and some accountability and limits, then I think we would see a good chunk of money that could be allocated into other areas, not just public schools, but other areas like healthcare and our families with disabilities. That was a whole other issue that was presented this session as well. And we will continue to fight for those voices that are not heard. And I look forward to being on the floor and bringing those families back whose voices have not been heard and sharing their story. And that's something that we were able to do. And I will tell you, the hardest part about that was watching the majority turn their backs on these families while they were sitting up in the gallery, and those children and their families being there to just say, hey, this is affecting me. What you're doing right now, what you're voting on right now is affecting our family. So please make a good choice. And to literally see them having conversations with each other and turning their backs on these people. And we won't do that. As a Democrat, I will not do that. I will this is their house. I will continue to invite them back, and I will speak their name on the floor. So I'm really looking forward to having that opportunity again this session.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Representative, for being with us today. I love the theme for today of using your voice. I think we all have to take a lot of lessons out of that, and really appreciate you taking the time, and hoping to see you, I think, in November at our upcoming conference.
I will be there. I'm very excited. Thank you.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. Good to see you.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. Thanks to the team at NewDEAL for producing this episode. We encourage you to bring honor to public service, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars are used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.